Have you always wanted that cool shift fart that all the DSG kids have? Well, now you can. Now, I'm a bit curious to see how this turns out because my car already kind of makes the shift noises even without the setting on. So typically when you're driving around, the more throttle you apply and the higher up in your RPMs you are, the more likely you would be to get the shift noise that we're all looking for. So what these sliders effectively allow you to do is adjust the amount of throttle, or in this case torque, and the RPMs at which you want your engine to cut the ignition, thus giving you that shift noise. So if you want it only at higher RPMs, you can adjust that slider. If you only want it on higher throttle, you can adjust the torque up as well. So you can lower the RPMs and the torque levels at which this happens, but according to Xhp'S website, doing it at lower RPMs and lower throttle makes the shifting a lot less smooth. Now that's not a huge deal when you are going full throttle at high RPMs because you don't care if the shift is smooth, you want it to be as fast and as crisp as possible. So I've seen a lot of people commenting on how this setting is affected with torque reduction upshifts as well. And just for reference for the rest of the video, these are my settings for torque reduction. I have plus 4% across the board, just because I feel like this kind of smooths out the shift just a little bit without sacrificing any of the speed and response. So on top of that, I am leaving the default settings for the ignition cut shifting, just to see how they are, and if I feel like it needs to be adjusted, I will do so. So I've just gone out for a drive to test the new ignition cut shifting, and I will say with the default settings turned on for the ignition cut, it actually does it less than had you not touched it. It's basically only giving me the shift cracks above 4,000 at like full throttle. So there's no like low throttle shift cracks like there were before. So what I'm gonna do is go home and reduce the minimum RPMs and reduce the required torque to give you that ignition cut. All right, so I've lowered everything to a minimum and here's what it's like. All right, so you're definitely getting shift cracks where you certainly were not before. So I'm definitely noticing a difference and I'm getting shift cracks a lot more frequently. All right, let's get a full throttle pull here. Alright guys, so I just got back from testing the new settings, and I will say, The shift noise is much more frequent than it is without activating the ignition cut shifting. Particularly in sport mode, it makes the noise a lot more and a good bit louder than before. Now in Sport Plus, it's about the same volume, but the frequency is much more. You get it a lot more at low throttle and low RPMs than you did before. So just as a recap from my findings, the shift noise in sport mode is much more apparent, and Sport Plus is not much louder, but it is more frequent. So if you guys want more shift noises, activating the ignition cut shifting definitely increases the frequency of it, not so much the volume of it when you're going full throttle, but you get to hear it a lot more often. One thing I did notice though, as Xhp stated, if you're at low throttle and low RPMs, when it cuts the ignition to shift, it is a little bit rough and jittery, so I might raise the minimum torque level a little bit higher just so it doesn't happen as often at low throttle. But other than that, I really like it. You get the noise a lot more often and it kind of adds to the fun. So would I recommend doing this? Absolutely. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.